Hi, in this video I'll help you get to know your car a little better. At the end of this video I've put together a straightforward infographic that summarizes all the key points. Like, subscribe and comment below. It really helps.
You know that check engine light on your dashboard? It's not just some random annoying light. Nope, it's a clue. And today, we're going to put on our detective hats and solve one of the most common automotive mysteries out there, the dreaded P0304 code.
So you've plugged in your trusty scanner, and it spits out this code, P0304. What in the world does that mean? Well, let's break it down. The P just tells you it's a powertrain code. The 03 part means it's a misfire, but the real smoking gun is that last number, 04. That tells your car's brain has pinpointed the problem, and it's happening specifically in cylinder number 4.
But what even is a misfire? Okay, imagine your engine is like a perfectly synchronized rowing team, and each cylinder is one of the rowers. A misfire is when one of those rowers, in our case cylinder 4, completely misses a stroke. All of a sudden the rhythm is gone, the boat jerks, and you're losing power. It's that simple. The air and fuel are there, but for some reason they just didn't ignite.
Now, hold on, because this next part is really, really important. If that check engine light is on and steady, okay, you've got a problem. But if that light is flashing, that is an emergency. That's not a get-to-it-later problem. It's a pull-over-safely, right-now problem. A flashing light means raw, unburned gasoline is getting pumped into your exhaust, and it can literally melt down your catalytic converter, a repair that can cost thousands. So please, do not ignore a flashing light.
Every good investigation starts by gathering clues from the scene of the crime. And in this case, the scene is your driver's seat. So what are the telltale signs? What are you actually feeling, hearing, and maybe even smelling?
Does any of this sound familiar? Maybe you're sitting at a red light and the whole car just feels shaky? Or you go to accelerate and it hesitates or jerks instead of giving you that smooth power. You're definitely heading to the gas station more often than you used to. And sometimes, you might even catch a strong whiff of gas from the exhaust pipe. Yep, these are all classic symptoms that cylinder 4 has decided to stop pulling its weight. All right, we've got our clues. We know what's happening. Now it's time to bring in the usual suspects. When a cylinder misfires, the reason almost always falls into one of just a few key categories. Let's get them in a lineup.
And take a look at this. It's not even close, is it? A whopping 70% of the time, the culprit is an ignition problem. That's our prime suspect right there. Yeah, you could have issues with fuel deliveries or even a serious mechanical fault, but the evidence is pointing overwhelmingly in one direction, the spark. So that's where we're going to start our investigation.
So how do we get our prime suspect to confess? Well, we've got a simple but absolutely brilliant interrogation technique for this. It's called the swap test. And let me tell you, this is the single best DIY diagnostic you can do. And the best part, it costs you absolutely nothing but a few minutes of your time. Here's the plan. First, you've got to find cylinder 4. Your owner's manual is a good place to start, but honestly, a quick online search for your car model is probably faster. Then, you're just going to unplug and unbolt the ignition coil on cylinder 4 and swap it with one from a cylinder you know is working fine, like cylinder 1. Then, you clear the codes with your scanner, take the car for a short spin, and check the codes again. And this is where the magic happens. There are only two possible outcomes. One, the misfire code moves with the coil. So now your scanner says P0301. If that happens, bingo, case closed. You found the bad guy. It's a faulty ignition coil. But if the code stays on P0304, well, that tells you the coil is innocent. The problem is something else specific to that cylinder, like maybe the spark plug or the fuel injector. But you know, here's a little plot twist. Have you ever wondered why it seems like certain cylinders are always the troublemakers? It's not just random chance. Cylinder 4 on a lot of engines has a few built-in weaknesses, all because of where it sits. Think of cylinder 4 as being at the very end of the supply line. It's the last one to get fuel from the fuel rail. So if your fuel pump starts getting a little weak, it's the first to feel it. It's also often the farthest cylinder from the water pump, which means it can run just a little bit hotter than the others. And it has the longest wires going to it, which over time increases the chances of an electrical problem. It just gets the short end of the stick. And this isn't just a theory. You can see these patterns play out in the real world. On a lot of inline-4 engines, that extra heat can lead to head gasket problems right around cylinder 4. On some popular GM V6 engines, a leaking intake manifold gasket is a super common cause. And don't even get me started on certain Ford V8s, where cylinder 4 is infamous for literally blowing the spark plug right out of the cylinder head.
So let's say you've done the swap test, you've even put in a new spark plug, and that P0304 code is just still there, staring back at you. This means our mystery runs a little deeper than a simple bolt-on part. A good detective knows when it's time to call for backup.
The first tool a professional mechanic is going to grab is a compression tester. All this does is measure how well a cylinder can build and hold pressure. Think of it like checking its blood pressure. If cylinder 4 has way lower pressure than all the others, that confirms it. We've got a serious internal mechanical problem, something like a worn-out piston ring or a bad valve.
But mechanics have another cool trick. If the compression is low, they'll do what's called a wet test, where they squirt a tiny bit of oil into the cylinder and test it again. If the pressure suddenly shoots way up, that oil has temporarily sealed the gap around worn piston rings. That's our smoking gun. If the pressure stays low, well, the oil didn't help, which means the leak is probably up in the valves.
Okay, so let's say we found our culprit. It was a bad coil, a clogged injector, maybe something worse. We replace the part, the engine's running smooth again, case closed, right? Well, not quite. Now we have to make sure this particular crime doesn't happen again.
And this right here is probably the most important thing to take away from this whole explainer. Don't just fix the broken part in cylinder 4. You have to ask the bigger question. Why did it fail? Was it just a random bad part, or is there a bigger systemic issue that made cylinder 4 the first domino to fall?
So future-proofing means thinking bigger. If one ignition failed, guess what? The others are just as old and live the same life. It's a good idea to replace them all. Same with spark plugs. If it was a clogged fuel injector, maybe the root cause is a dirty old fuel filter that needs changing. And if it was a serious mechanical issue, well, the best defense is a good offense. Stick to a strict maintenance schedule with high-quality oil and coolant.
So I'll leave you with this final thought. You've cleared the code, the car is running great again, you've fixed cylinder 4, but did you find and solve the real problem that caused it to fail in the first place? Answering that question, that's the difference between a temporary patch and a long-term repair. And it's the real secret to keeping that check engine light off for good.